Hey YouTube, today I got something a little different, a little more out of the ordinary, a little controversial, a little deviation from the standard Axis and Allies. Last night, Rick and I played Axis and Allies and Zombies remotely, and it was my first time playing this game. I got this game when it came out, and I looked over the rules, and it sounded interesting, but I never got around to actually playing it. As I'm sure many of you are aware, this is quite the controversial installment in the Axis and Allies legacy of games, if you could call it that. And a lot of people, a lot of history buffs, instantly hated this game. I know a lot of people have refused to play it. And Larry Harris was not involved with this, as I guess he had a falling out with Wizards of the Coast. And so this is a Wizards original game without his involvement. But it's an Axis and Allies game, so I wanted to get it regardless. And I'm open to alternate history. I know a lot of people aren't necessarily, and like I said before, a lot of people badmouth this game without really even having played it, or they play it and they just hate it so much and toss it to the wind, and just denounce it as a cash grab gimmick, which makes sense. There's pros and cons to this game, so I figured I would do a little kind of a review, kind of an overview of my first game, and just kind of share my thoughts on how this game is. So Rick and I played the basic, because you can play this with 1942, the 1942 game, using that map and the extra units from that. But we just played basic Axis and Allies and Zombies. We played the event cards with both things. That like normally you have to play this, and then you optionally play the extra thing to give a little the desperate measures or whatever to give it a little bit more flair. Anyway. If you're not sure how this game exactly plays, I'm not going to go over as to how the game is. I'm not going to go over how to play the game, but I'm going to go over things I thought about it. Side note, I'm backing up to what I was saying before. I do enjoy alternate history, and I think that incorporating alternate history, I'm not opposed to incorporating crazy things. I'm not incorporating. Some people like HBG are incorporating aliens, like War of the Worlds type aliens and Atlantis and so on and so on. And I'm not opposed to that. Some people are very opposed to that. I'm not opposed to that at all. Anything to make it different, I am totally down to do. The question is whether or not this game did it well, or at least whether or not Wizards did it well. Obviously, HBG have their zombie expansion as well, which is where I got these nice HBG zombie roundels. And yeah, so these are from HBG, not included in the game. Normally included in the game, you get your standard cardboard chits or not chits, roundels, and on the other side is you just flip it over to the zombie roundel. So that's kind of efficient. That's kind of cool. But they're still cardboard roundels, and I don't like those. So HBG roundels, but otherwise, and I did get a few more HBG, not HBG, but a few more zombies from HBG, just to beef up the number of zombies I had. But otherwise, I played this with just the limited amount of pieces that they gave you to play this game, and they don't, like as usual, they don't give you quite enough. Anyway, backing up again, I'm not opposed to alternate history. And I'm also a very, side note, I'm actually a very, very big horror movie fan. But even then, by the time that this came out, in 2018, was it? Something like that? The zombie craze that we've been having for the past decade was already kind of going on its way out. Walking Dead is a show that's been just shambling along, Why is it canceled? Why is it still going? Why isn't it canceled? Who knows? So I'm not a huge fan of things like Walking Dead necessarily, but I do love me some good old zombie movies, and Italian zombie movies especially. Again, I was down to play this, but by the time that they decided, hey, let's do this, it definitely felt like a cash grab. It definitely felt like too much of, I don't know, it just felt like too late. I think if they released this 2 years earlier, when the zombie craze was probably more at its high, or earlier than that even, they probably would have had more success with this, and more people probably would have gravitated towards this. But when they decided to release this, it just was like, why? Like, why are you guys doing that now? That ship kind of sailed. At least that was my interpretation of it. But I was still down to play it, and there were still things about it that were interesting, even if there were some negative ideas people had about it from the get-go, myself included. But anyway, point being, finally played it with me and Rick. We played it remotely, so just so we weren't drawing the same cards from here. Rick pulled the cards, and he just read them from on his end. If it was my turn, he drew a card, and he just read it to me and said what it was, just so that we weren't like drawing the same cards technically. But anyway, this is really cool. I really like this card, these random event cards. This is really cool. I really do like this aspect of the game, and the fact that this is a way to incorporate places on the board that you wouldn't normally be able to incorporate. So like at the very end of our game, we only played a 4-round game actually. This game is really, really quick, which that's a nice positive plus to it. But it's really cool that like Turkey became zombie controlled, and now you can invade Turkey, and it's not just a traditional strict neutral. Nothing ever happened in South America, but lots of zombies popped up in Africa, on a lot of UK territories, and Sweden became zombie controlled. A few other things happened. This became zombie controlled. At the most, if the zombies get to 25 on the tracker, a zombie apocalypse happened. At most, they only got to 11. As you can see, one of the things I'm not a huge fan of is that the industrial complexes are printed on the board. But what is different is that for India and China, they are not industrial complexes, they are recruitment centers, so you can only place infantry there. So that's kind of interesting. There's no air bases, no naval bases. It's very straightforward. The idea is that you're supposed to play it very quick and simple. If you want to play a more complex, play 1942. Again, I have mixed feelings overall about this version of the game, but I am very interested in playing the 1942 version of this. I think that's going to have a lot more meat and potatoes, but this is a nice, quick game overall. Backing up, as you can see, this is very clearly an Axis victory. We had no strategies going in. Rick and I randomly rolled. Rick rolled a die, and that determined 1 through 3 the Axis, and then 4 through 6 allies. So he got Axis, and the turn order is Russia, Germany, UK, Japan, and the US. My beef with 1941 and this, since they're so small, and I think the smaller you make Axis and allies, the tougher this front is to adapt properly. And as Russia, I attacked, and I attacked West Russia, and even though there were 3 German units starting out there, even though I went in with a sizable army, it still went into 2 rounds of combat. I missed. I rolled terrible, and he knocked a few casualties off of me, and then he just threw everything he had, all the tanks he had. He threw everything he had pretty much at that section there. Right away, also zombies went and popped up into the Middle East, so Russia went down to the Middle East to get a point for doing that, because each cards have, you get different bonuses on some certain cards for knocking out zombie territories sometimes. Anyway, so Russia had a little bit of incentive to go down there and do that, but Russia went into West Russia, and then Germany took it back. And when Germany took it back, all the Russian units in here, I only got 2 hits out of it, and it was like that one battle, Russia got hosed with the dice rolls on that first turn, and by the end of the second turn, Russia was out of the game. Moscow fell. Russia wasn't completely out of the game, as you can see. There's some guys in China here, and some Far East units went down into Manchuria and actually wonderfully withheld a Japanese assault there at one point, but eventually they did fall. But yeah, in 1941, Russia can get hosed really easily. So at the same time, I'm still used to this. I'm still getting used to this game. I've only played it once, and each game, it's you got to get used to how the map is laid out and get a more sense of what to do, how to approach each map a little differently. And my thing with Russia, I always want to be too aggressive with Russia, and then that might have been my thing. That might have been my main problem, why Russia fell so quickly. Again, this is supposed to be a quick game. Why Russia fell so quickly. But ultimately, it was the die rolls of those two battles in West Russia that basically doomed Russia, and then Moscow fell because he had all the tanks he had, he just sent them all over there, and UK couldn't get in, not enough could happen over here in the beginning of the game within those 2 rounds for UK or US to react well enough over here. So that's kind of a problem. But again, I'd like to play the 1942 version. Maybe it won't be as bad, probably not as bad as the 1942 version. UK stocked up a sizable amount of infantry in India and Egypt. The U.S., that's me. I opted to send my naval units this way, over here, to help with things. And at the very end of the game, I took France. I'm obviously not going to hold it, but I took it, Western Europe, and that kind of stuff happened. But ultimately, that allowed Japan to do a Calcutta Crush, and knock that out. Pretty much when Germany that fell, and then that Egypt fell, and then Calcutta fell, like one and then the other, pretty much in the same round, I think. So we're looking, easily an Axis victory. And yeah, really quick, I made a few mistakes early on. Again, getting used to it. Both of us had a few drinks, and we were just kind of like seeing what happens, and I wasn't putting too much concentration into what I was doing. Just kind of like with the zombies popping up, it was very much just kind of let's see what happens kind of a game. So again, this for me, it was kind of a playtest. Mongolia became zombie occupied. Zombies popped up in Siberia. They popped up over here occasionally. Afghanistan became zombie occupied at one point. India was occupied. Oh, there should be a British roundel on Afghanistan, but whatever. And yeah, pretty much that happened. And anytime the UK tried to build the Navy up again, he would just bomb it with his fighters and his bombers. Yeah, it's a very limited, very small game. It's very quick. But besides that aspect, I do want to point out a couple things I noticed that I didn't like in terms of these component. This is a fun game. It is interesting. It's different. But most of my quips are just with how Wizards did this physically. So, one of my main beefs, the technology chart is just on the back of the manual. So that's annoying. Why can't I just, if you give us this big battle board, which is on a thin piece of cardboard, almost paper, why can't you give us another piece of cardboard of this? Because every time I have to look at the rule book to check something, as you can see, Japan got a lot of tech. And the tech is pretty interesting. What was it? I think it was that. Oh no, it was this. Yeah. So the tech is different in this game. It basically comes down to the cards being drawn. But the tech is zombie mind control ray, dead napper convoys, air dots, chainsaw tanks. Japan got that immediately, by the way. Z4 explosives and zebra suits. If you want, you can pause it and read it. but I'm not going to go over everything verbatim. But anyway, so that's kind of a beef. I would much rather a little tech chart, or even just putting it at the bottom of this, or something else. Anyway, there's the manual. The board is kind of, the aesthetics of the board are kind of cool. We'll get a little close up. You get some blood splatters everywhere, especially on Turkey. That's kind of cool. But here, but when we played this, right away I noticed a big error. Coastal China. That's supposed to be coastal China. And the card even spells it correctly. I really hate it when things are misspelled, especially things on a board. Side note: the anniversary edition Afghanistan is misspelled, but it's spelled in a way where you wouldn't notice it if you weren't sure how Afghanistan was spelled. It looks passable, but coastal and coastal, that's very obvious. So there's that. Right away, as you can tell, I don't like to chip. Personally, I don't like to chip my planes, and I had to resort to doing that. They do not give you nearly enough pieces. I did buy extra zombies, but I just wanted to play this with the out-of-box pieces and get a sense of how much they short you. And I was frequently, because I think each country only gets like 2 destroyers, so I was frequently taking subs and then just putting them on roundels to denote them as destroyers. So that's annoying. They could have just thrown a few more extra pieces in there. I don't like using chips for naval units if I don't have to. Got a stack of 3 destroyers right here. And yeah, I think I ran out of British fighters at one point. As you can see here, I had to chip another fighter down there. So I'm not a fan of doing that, and I think they could have just thrown in a few more pieces. I know that a lot of people just combine them all. There's slightly different colors with certain versions, like these UK pieces are definitely more of a baby puke color than the standard tan, and maybe you can't quite see it in the lighting here, but it's definitely not quite the same. It's a little darker. It doesn't really match with the other pieces from the other games. Here, I'll get one to compare real quick. Alright, so this is from Global. And this is from Zombies. Let's see that. It's a noticeable shade difference. To some people, it might not be a big deal. I have a friend who this would drive him crazy, but doesn't bother me too much. But I do like to try and keep my game pieces separated, especially because the molds are sometimes different. Not so much in this game, but that is something I noticed. So UK was the most obviously different from Global and the others in terms of the color shade. Let's see what else. Okay. So the battle board and the hit dice. We'll go over that. So because of this game, the way it works, we were only able to use our battle dice if zombies were not involved in combat, and otherwise I'd have to use these 2 colors. So you can kind of designate 2 colors for two different kinds of units. You can roll 2 different kinds of units at once, if you want to, or you can do just your standard attacker, defender, or vice versa. And then you have these zombie dice. So when you attack a territory, the zombies go first, and I'm not sure how much I feel that is accurate. Not necessarily accurate, but I don't know how I feel about that. I feel like if people have guns, they should be able to fire the guns first, and then the surviving zombies should be able to fight. But in this game, the zombies bite first, and then the zombies roll this die, and there's 2 A's and 1 D. So basically, if there's a battle in a territory that has 2, You roll these dice, and if a D is rolled, that means the defender loses 1. If an A is rolled, that means the attacker loses 1, and the attacker is twice as likely to lose than the defender. I don't know how I feel about that. I kind of feel like these should just be zombie bites in general. I think these should it should be equal, or something. I don't know. Maybe like 2 Ds, 2 As, 2 Ds and 2 As. Or just, I don't know, there should be something about that doesn't quite sit with me. And then, obviously, so here the 6s are also hits against zombies only. And that's cool. Very cool. I like the skull is nice. The head explosion, the headshot is very nice. But again, I can't use typical hit dice with it. And just the aesthetic of these dice just aren't that great, I think. I mean, it matches with the out-of-box zombies, but aesthetically, I'm not sure about this in dice form. It's just all aesthetics. It doesn't really matter. What matters is the gameplay. And in terms of the turn order, they want to change up the turn order, and I don't know how that. I don't know how I feel about the changing up of the turn of the events. So like in this game, the idea is that you don't buy your units until the end of your round, and supposedly that's to save time, but I don't think that really actually saves any time. You can't plan your purchases. It is kind of nice that you can react to what happens and then do your purchases, but I really like to buy my stuff in advance, or at least plan it out in advance. And then you get your then you get your money. But I don't know, after so many decades of buying units, attacking, combat, non-combat movement, place units, get your money, to change that up, and you can just play it the default old way if you wanted to. There's no reason you can't, but to throw it at the end there it's just kind of, for an experienced XNLS player, it's kind of awkward. And I prefer to have the option of incorporating zombies into global, and you totally can. But I don't think anyone would play with buying your units at the end of your turn in global, for instance. Let's see, what else? That about covers it, more or less. This box is the box they give you, which is kind of cool. Here's the 1942 cards they give you for playing with 42 versus the out-of-box zombie cards. Because as you can see, there's a lot more. So yeah, overall, I think it's a mixed bag. I think Wizards dropped the ball in terms of just providing, it's a cheaper game, but just put a little bit more money into it. And there's no excuse for errors, especially on the board. If it was on the card, I probably wouldn't care as much, but just that it's on the board, I don't know. I guess I'm a grammar Nazi or whatever, spelling Nazi, whatever you want to call it. But that drives me a little crazy right there. It's just like, how many people worked on this? How many people looked at this and didn't notice Coastal China? Whatever. I'm sure there's maybe another one misspelled that right, but who knows? Anyway, here are your setup cards also, and they're kind of nice. Got some blood splatter on them too. Oh, my last quip. Again, so in the manual, then these are your basic setups for zombies. But for the 42 setup, is, where is it? It's here. And I'm sure it's probably very similar to the 1942 setup. I'm sure there's probably a few differences to the basic 1942 game setup. Maybe it's exactly the same. I don't know, but I think it's a little different. I haven't compared them, but if you look at this, everything is in order except America. The U.S. is set up you notice anything wrong here? C-Zone 11, 19, etc. Infantry, infantry, infantry. No ships. Are these units on transports? What exactly? It's just ridiculous. How did you not catch? How did they not catch that? This is clearly wrong. And as far as I can tell, whenever I've looked at it online, there's been no official errata for this game, or clarifications, or anything. There's nothing published by Wizards of the Coast as far as I can tell. So a lot of people just say, oh, just use the U.S. naval setup for Axis and Allies 1942. But I would personally like an official clarification as to what it's supposed to be. So they put this game out, they spent however long developing it, and then they didn't do jack shit about fixing anything, as far as I can tell. So good job, Wizards. I've heard that recently that their parent company, I'm blanking the name on, took the Avalon Hill brand away from Wizards of the Coast. So maybe we'll see some changes. Maybe we'll see some improvements. Hopefully 1914 will get reissued. And I've seen something about that possibly happening next year, but I haven't seen anything official about it. So I'm holding my breath right now. But hopefully somebody else is able to give Axis and Allies the proper care and treatment it deserves. Again, this is a fine little mini game, but in terms of what Axis and Allies people want, it's it's not perfect. I don't know. I'm not, as you can kind of tell, I'm not exactly sure how to phrase this, how to phrase my opinion of this. I think it's cool. I think I want to try it again. I don't exactly love it. It is fun. It's different, and I think that's the most important thing, is to just variety. Variety is the spice of life. Different ideas can get incorporated into different games. People can bring these zombies into global if they want to. All that stuff is cool. But how the execution of this, with the little things, it's always the little things that get to me, but the execution of this game is, I think, the biggest drawback. However, I am still very excited to try and play this with 1942. I haven't even actually played 1942. I have it just because I wanted to get them all, and the idea of playing this with that sounded a lot more interesting than this, but I wanted to play basic Axis and Allies and Zombies first before playing that. So, stay tuned for a sequel for this. Probably, maybe not immediately, but later on down the road, we'll do a Axis and Allies and Zombies 1942 game, and I'll give you my thoughts on that. I'm feeling it's probably going to be a lot better than this version of the game. I like the simplicity of it, but it's almost a little too simple. Also, final thought, the zombies that popped up, it wasn't like, the zombies never they never threatened to get to the point of the zombie apocalypse. And again, it only went 4 rounds, but top of the 5th round, it was an obvious Axis victory. But the zombies were never they never derailed the German push. They were an irritants, but they never derailed the German push, and they never derailed anybody's progress, basically. So as to how much of an impact the zombies actually pose, I might incorporate some things just to make them harder and make them so that if a zombie pops up, the units in that territory have to deal with it. They can't move out of it or whatever. And maybe we played a minor rule here or there wrong, but I'm fairly certain we did this correct. Anyway, that's my thought. Before this goes past, those are my thoughts on Axis and Allies and Zombies. And before this hits that 30-minute mark, I'm going to sign off. Have fun out there, YouTube. And as always, roll the dice better.